President Donald Trump commends the giant strides recorded by President Muhammadu Buhari in critical sectors of Nigerian economy.
As part of Workers' Day celebration, organized labor holds pre-May Day lecture, promises to sustain wealth creation.
Nigerian Air Force takes delivery of 2 Mi-35M helicopter gunships ordered from Australia. Federal government.
Good morning, Nigeria. Today, our focus is on Nigerian workers, their rights, struggles, and triumphs as they join their counterparts in most parts of the world today to mark this year's Workers' Day. Well, today is the Workers' Day, otherwise called Kingsley the May Day, a day set aside. It's a worldwide celebration of all workers, or you term them the working class. That's right, Rhoda. Now, the federal government has declared today a public holiday, and this is to allow Nigerian workers join their counterparts elsewhere in the world to mark the day, designed yearly to commemorate the struggle and sacrifice of workers, and also to bring to the fore the immense contributions of workers to the socio-economic well-being of nations. Now, labor leaders say that May Day is more of an occasion to remind workers of the past bitter struggles carried out in the world and in Nigeria for trade union rights, including the rights for a better society, free from exploitation and denials. Now, the working class around the world has always had to struggle to win decent wages and safe working conditions. But what is the state of the Nigerian worker today, and what are his current struggles and triumphs? Now, the year 2017 was particularly tough and challenging for workers in Nigeria, with attendant loss of jobs, unpaid salaries and pensions, stunted minimum wage, rising inflation, petrol scarcity across the country, and above all, the fall in the value of the naira. Well, as things are today, some of the biggest concerns of workers in Nigeria are normally for an increase in the minimum wage, and end to workers being owed several months of their salaries, high unemployment rates, as well as, again, inflation. And to address the call by labor for an enhanced pay for workers, President Muhammadu Buhari in November last year inaugurated a 30-member tripartite National Minimum Wage Committee for the negotiation of a new national minimum wage. Now, the committee has commenced public hearing in all the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. The organized labor is asking that the national minimum wage be increased from 18,000 naira to 66,500. All right, and closely allied to that is the question of irregular or non-payment of salaries, as well as, of course, the pensions that are owed retired public servants. And in some cases, some of these arrears in pensions are said to be well over a year in many states of the Federation. And this is in spite of the bailout funds as well as the Pari Club refunds from the federal government to enable states pay their worker salaries. Now, many of them, of course, these are states, they are still owing their workers. Now, the labor movement, however, is not immune to crisis. The bitter power struggle during its last election is still fresh and festering. Again, there is the speculation of the formulation of another Central Labour Federation from the existing 2. But Nigerian Labour Congress, the NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, have vowed to resist such idea. Now, what is the state of the Nigerian worker today? What are the factors militating against his or her productivity, and how can the welfare of the worker be enhanced? These and other questions we shall try to elicit responses from our guests in our first discussion segment of the 2018 Workers' Day.
And on the other hand, we have another topic for today, and our focus is on the first national summit on hides and skins value chain in Abuja. The summit seeks to promote hides and skins, an important lucrative subsector, very much overlooked and neglected in the stream of trade and commerce in the agricultural sector in Nigeria.
Now, experts indicate that the leather industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar market in the world today, depends largely on hides and skin. But in Nigeria, the leather industry is virtually non-existent, having, of course, fallen on hard times because the raw materials, that is to say hides and skin, usually are exported almost raw or smuggled out of the country with little or no value addition.
Now, the question is, what can be done to revive the hides and skin subsector of the economy? What are the prospects and challenges, and what are the opportunities provided by the summit? These are also questions which I'll try to provide answers to on the second topic we're discussing this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. This is Good Morning Nigeria. We are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, and we are the largest television network in Africa. I'm Rhoda Anona.
I'm Kingsley Osadola. I join Rhoda in also welcoming you to the program, in the course of which we shall have our regular companion segments, including newspaper review, business, sports, and others. In the meantime, here is our other colleague, Anne Jibuno, with the morning news. Hi, Anne.
Hello, Kingsley and Rhoda. Good morning. Welcome to the news. Security and economic issues dominated discussions as the United States President Donald Trump formally received President Muhammadu Buhari at the White House. A colorful and befitting diplomatic ceremony was held to formally welcome the president, who arrived at the White House at 12 o'clock Monday afternoon local time. President Donald Trump warmly received the Nigerian leader at forecourt of the Oval Office. The two leaders then retreated for talks on issues critical to the mutually beneficial relationship between their countries. President Donald Trump of the United States has described as remarkable the giant strides recorded by President Muhammadu Buhari in critical sectors of the Nigerian economy, especially in the fight against terrorism, corruption and diversification of the economy. At a joint media briefing after the high-level bilateral talk between the leaders and their delegations at the White House, President Trump, who described Nigeria as a dependable partner of the United States, promised to work more closely with the country in addressing issues of common interest.
Is a valued partner and a good friend. I look forward to working closely with you to deepen our cooperation and forge an even closer partnership. The United States is committed to working alongside Nigeria as we seek a future of strength, prosperity, and peace.
President Muhammadu Buhari, who commended the United States for tremendously supporting Nigeria in the fight against insecurity, called for greater efforts towards increasing the volume of trade between Nigeria and the U.S., which now stands at over $6 billion.
In our effort to recover stolen funds, our two governments have put the machinery in place for their respective attorney generals to collaborate in ensuring the return to Nigeria of over 500 million United States dollars of looted funds siphoned away in banks around the world.
Discussions between the two leaders also centered on governance, human rights and humanitarian crisis. Well, President Buhari's visit to the White House has been described as laudable and a significant achievement for the present administration. Speaking on NTA's current affairs program, Nigeria Today, political analyst Professor Chudi Wazirike commended the president for being the first sub-Saharan African head of state to visit President Trump in the White House. He also added that Nigeria needs all the assistance it can get from the United States of America to fight insurgency.
Buhari is the first African head of state to actually have this kind of official visit to to Washington. I think Nigeria needs all the encouragement, commendation, and actual assistance that they can get.
The Nigerian Air Force has taken delivery of 2 Mi-35M helicopter gunships that the federal government ordered from Russia, which touched down noon at the NAF base Makurdi. A statement by the Director of Public Relations and Information, Air Vice Marshal Olatokunbo Adeshaya, indicates that the Chief of Aircraft Engineering at the headquarters took delivery on behalf of the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar. The newly received combat helicopters, which form the second batch of the fleet of Mi-35M, are capable of night fighting and the most sophisticated in the Mi series of helicopter gunships. The delivery would go a long way in adding impetus to the current efforts at combating the security challenges in Benue State and other flashpoints in the country. In other news, tourism in Nigeria, if well harnessed, is capable of contributing immensely to the economy and generating revenue for the growth of the country. Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, said this while receiving the technical consultant to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, David McEwen, in his office.
Without planning, there can be little or no development. And what you need in tourism to plan really is actually statistics. And this is the major problem we have today in tourism.
A roundtable for post-mortem of the November 18, 2017 Anambra governorship election with a view to providing a focus for the forthcoming Ekiti and Osun state governorship elections has been convened by the INEC Electoral Institute in Abuja. This roundtable seeks to contextually evaluate the Commission's performance in previous elections with a view to leveraging on the successes and failures ahead of the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections in July and September this year.
Limited number of petitions and complaints arising from that election assures us that our processes were successful.
And there is no better foundation rather than to go and look at what happened in Anambra.
We want to keep building the right momentum as we go towards the 2019 general elections on 16th of February 2019.
The federal government says reinforcement work on the 53-year-old Niger Bridge is to be completed by the end of the year. This was during a media tour to the infrastructure.
So far, so good. You can see that the contractor is working, and we're satisfied with the quality of work.
The Nigerian Labour Congress says the body is not relenting in ensuring that the new minimum wage is implemented as promised by the federal government. Serafina Okon, on a mission to find out the significance of the day to the Nigerian workforce, paid a visit to the Labour House. She also sampled opinion on expectations from Nigerians.
It's a day we will take stock of what conditions of work have evolved from the last May Day to this May Day. What has happened to the quality of the remuneration of workers.
Fighting corruption, we are advising government to treat the Nigerian workers who are creators of wealth, to treat us well, to review workers' salaries upward through the minimum wage.
Nigerians are looking for quality of life, basic services, as promised by the government.
Well, that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back with Rhoda and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
reorganized, trained, and fully equipped. We are the new, improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Thrift collection has been an age-long medium of saving among people.
It's very good for trader.
However, not everybody is honest, and some have been known to run away with other people's sweats.
I promise you, when you join Mr. Fred, is your cooperative by force.
How careful can people be about entrusting their money to dubious Osusu collectors?
What do you mean by park? Park to the motor park or park to where? What are you talking about? Wait! I am the highest investor here.
Your rib-cracking comedy, Professor John Bull, this week takes a comic look at the issues surrounding Osusu contribution and collection in this episode titled Osusu Contribution.
This is Osusu Morias.
I feel soporific and Pablo.
Join us and laugh like never before.
Mr. Madoya, I believe that's your name. Go on. What is now your question?
I don't forget the question.
DC, over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network, Glow Unlimited.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three put.
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome.
You take that one.
Yeah, take that one.
You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have.
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? Look, that's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobu to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made. Correct. And how they are cook it. Correct. Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. Time now to update you in the world of business. Let's join our business desk now for more in the world of business.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, has collected a total revenue of 1.171 trillion naira in the first quarter of 2018, which is 393 billion naira higher than the 778.1 billion naira collected during the corresponding period in 2017. The 1.171 trillion naira collection in the first quarter represented a 51% increase in collection compared to 2017. The executive chairman, FIRS, Mr. Tunde Fowler, gave the figures in Lagos and stated that good taxpayers should do their duties conscientiously to make Nigeria great again. Meanwhile, the Nigerian investment terrain is making positive gains with foreign portfolio investment leading northwards by 80.9% in the first quarter of 2018 to 381.82 billion naira. A report from the Nigerian Stock Exchange reveals that foreign inflows rose to 206.35 billion naira, while foreign outflows rose to 175.47 billion in the quarter under review. This indicates a positive net foreign investment position of 30.9 billion naira. In a related development, the equities market closed the month of April in a positive trajectory. The all-share index gained 0.06% to close at 41,268.01 basis points. Investors traded 450 million shares in 4,699 deals worth £1 billion. Silazine, Hallmark Insurance and Better Glass topped the gainers chart, while Mutual Benefit, UBA and FBN Holdings were the most sought-after shares. Top on the losers chart were Regal Insurance, Etana Oil and Dangote Flows. Still talking investment, Nigeria had investment announcement worth $17.88 billion in the first quarter of 2018. This amount is 3 times higher than $6.38 billion announced in the same quarter 2017. The Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission says the announcement cuts across 32 projects in 8 states. With business news, I'm Chimobi Walter Naji.
Thank you very much, Chimo. I'll be there for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Next for us is a review of the headlines on the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
As always, our regular newspaper reviewer Bayo Toyobi is already in the studio, of course, to give more insight into our review this morning. Bayo, good morning.
Morning, Rhoda. Good morning, Kingsley.
Yeah.
I say Happy May Day.
Happy May Day.
Good morning,
Happy
Nigeria.
May Day. All right, Kingsley, let's start our review this morning. Of course, one story is, of course, trending on all the papers we have.
Lead story, by the way.
That's the lead story on all the papers this morning. And we'll begin with that, and that's the meeting with President Trump yesterday. Let's begin with the Nigerian pilot. Okay, let's begin with the Sun, the Daily Sun. And the Daily Sun says, Buhari meets Trump with riders. U.S. President lots Nigeria on anti-graft war. America to return $500 million looted funds. We won't accept killings of Christians. Those are the riders with that story. And let's move over now to the Nigerian pilots. The Nigerian pilots, same thing. He said, we won't accept killing of Christians, says Trump. Thanks Buhari for leadership in fighting terrorism. That story is on page 4 of the Nigerian pilot. Those are the stories leading on the front pages of the Sun and the Nigerian pilots. Kingsley.
That's right. And we also have the New Telegraph and the Daily Independent, and their lead stories are on the ongoing visit by the Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari to the United States. Trump to Buhari, that's New Telegraph. That's the kicker for the headline. It says, stop killings in Nigeria. And you have a very long writer there, which is an excerpt from President Trump's statement. It says, we've had serious problems with Christians who have been murdered, killed in Nigeria. We're going to be working on that problem and working on that problem very, very hard, because we can't allow that to happen. It's a horrible story. We encourage Nigeria to immediately secure the affected communities and to protect innocent civilians of all faiths, including Muslims and Christians. Now, that story is also lead, as I indicated earlier, for the Daily Independent. Trump to Buhari, that's another kicker. U.S. won't accept killings of Christians. The story is in greater detail on page 5, and you have the photograph there. Bayo, let's begin with that before we take other headlines.
Well, President Muhammadu Buhari and President Donald Trump held a joint press conference as part of the 4-day visit of President Muhammadu Buhari. And President Trump immediately indicated that the Tucano aircraft will soon be released to Nigeria to aid the fight against Boko Haram. However, the President Trump expressed his concern about what he described as we have problems with Christians who have been killed, and he was referring to the killing of 2 clergy and worshippers in the church in Benue. He said we will work very, very hard to solve that problem. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari told his host the challenges he has been facing and the initiatives taken regarding insecurity, corruption, and the economy. And he also thanked the United States government, particularly for their cooperation, and he congratulated the U.S. government for launching what he described as Kleptocracy Asset Recovery Initiative. He says both the Attorney Generals of Nigeria and U.S. have agreed, and they will be meeting to look at and collaborate to ensure that monies that have been stolen, over $500 million looted from Nigeria, returned. Meanwhile, the federal government also signed an agreement with 4 companies on the narrow gauge railway concession for a distance of about 3,400 kilometers. In the interim, they will do remedial civil and track repairs and also supply about 10 locomotives and 200 wagons. The initiative is with General Electric Company, Transit, and Sino Hydro, and it was signed in Washington. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Air Force also took delivery of 2 M135 combat helicopter from Russia. That is to tell you that Nigeria is diversifying the acquisition of armament to help it defend itself and fight internal insurgency. The chief aircraft engineer in the Nigerian Air Force, Air Vice Marshal Abdulgani Olabisi, says that after they have been assembled and inducted into the Air Force, they will be deployed into combat locations across the country.
All right, Bayo, thank you very much. There are other headlines today. It's Labor Day, so there are also stories on Labor Day. We return to the New Telegraph. Above the nameplate of New Telegraph, NLC insists on September deadline for 66,500 Naira minimum wage and vows to fight for better working conditions. And Saraki, that's the kicker, Nigerian workers are mainstay of the economy. Details of that story can be found on the front page with a jump to page 5. Now, below the nameplate of New Telegraph, 2 other headlines we take from there. Court jails son, Nwobike 30 days for bribing judge. That's on page 6. And police pensions records 75.7 billion naira profit. That's on page 31.
All right, so now on the Nigerian pilot, just above the nameplate, 2 stories that says we are not creating new polling units. That's INEC. 2019, we're not creating new polling units. And it's on page 6 and page 5, strike. Johesu denies killing 20 babies in Imo. And the story Bayo talked about earlier, and that's it's at the foot of the paper, just below the picture story. It says insurgency, federal government acquires 2 new helicopter gunships. Now let's move quickly to the Daily Sun. Just beside the nameplate, it says Benue government sues Miyetti Allah. That's on page 39. And if you come to just beside the picture story there, impeachment motion, more trouble for Edo senator. All right, Bayo, let's quickly. And then there was a story that was trending yesterday. It said court orders interim for future of Patience Jonathan's Abuja's property.
But let's start with the story about INEC, but this time is a different one. Newspaper is reporting that with 219 days to the 2019 general elections, INEC's budget for the election, which is about 300 billion, has not been approved. It is still hanging in the National Assembly, and there are indications that INEC require between 6 to 7 months for procurement processes to acquire all some of the materials they require for the election. So that is a fire on the mountain for the executive.
But isn't it part of the federal budget?
No, there's a separate budget for the 2019 election, which is for 300 billion, and it's been sent to the executive and the National Assembly for consideration, but there's been no response. And
because I recall,
the alarm is that we have about 219 days, and even to follow the procurement processes, it takes about 6 to 7 months.
I understand, but I thought there was some report some months ago about the late submission of that of the draft, appropriation for
the election.
Yes, and if I recall that.
The question is, it still has not been passed, and time is ticking away. Meanwhile, there are peace initiatives over the Mambila, and this is representative of ethnic groups in the Mambila have resolved that they will never fight one another again. They comprise of Fulani, Kambu, Kaka, and Panso. They met in a town hall meeting where there is an assessment committee appointed by Governor Darius Isiaku. The people talk frankly to one another. The chairman of Fulani Chiefs, Ardo, says that members have resolved not to be opposing to any conflict. Chairman of the village chiefs, Jauros, also revealed that the strange thing is that they don't know the reason why most of the time they find themselves fighting one another. The chief of Mambila, Dr. Shehu Baju, noted that the subjects displaced between the crisis of June 2017 and that of March 2018 have now returned. The 19-man committee is also to ascertain the number of deaths, the houses burned, the cows killed, and those that are stolen. Meanwhile, at Makurdi, Benue State government has taken Miyetti Allah Kaltohore to a Makurdi High Court on allegations of murder and widespread violence over 14 local government areas.
Yeah, Bayo, that story you just read is on the front page of the Daily Independent, above the nameplate of the Daily Independent. It says, withdrawal of my security aids improper. That's according to Governor Tom. Now, the writer this with that. It says, drags Miyetti Allah to court over killings. And below that, federal government asks court to declare Mo Agege's suspension illegal. That story is in greater detail on page 5. And then 3 other headlines we'll take from the foot of the front page of Daily Independent. Nigerian workers going through most trying times, says Atiku. And Dino's recall fiasco, sack looms for appointees from Kogi West. And first phase of second Niger bridge to be completed in July. That's according to the federal government.
All right, quickly, let's take our editorial for this morning, and it's on the leadership. Our editorial this morning is on the leadership, and of course, it's on the May Day. It's titled as Workers Mark May Day. It says May 1 of every year is set aside the world over, not just to celebrate workers, but also to call attention to labor issues and that are capable of impacting positively or negatively on the worker. If you jump down to some other paragraph, it says under normal circumstances, May Day celebration ought to serve for workers as a time to smile, because the 3 tiers of government ought to have improved over time the standard of living of Nigerians and workers in particular.
Well, the editorial of May Day started with the history of May Day itself, where it started in Australia as far back as 1856, and the whole argument was to fight for 8 hours working day, and it was replicated in the United States in 1886. And we remember the Pittsburgh riots, which was very, very serious, and they therefore resolved that 1st May 1890, from that day, every first May will be celebrated as Workers' Day. So today is International Workers' Day. But here in Nigeria, the concern of labor has been the issue of minimum wage. 18 naira minimum wage certainly cannot take any worker home, and they had initially proposed 56,000, and now with inflation and all circumstances, labor has changed its mind and is now saying that 66,500 is what they are demanding. And at a pre-May Day symposium yesterday, labor, both NLC and TUC, warned that they will not accept any delay by the tripartite committee, for which they are a party, to let the minimum wage decision exceed the 3rd quarter of the year. So all hands are on deck, and labor is threatening fire and brimstone that in fact, the minimum wage is long overdue, because by law it's supposed to be reviewed every 10 years, and it's already exceeded 10 years since the last one was...
if you say reviewed upwards or downwards?
Reviewed.
Upwards.
It's implied.
Because there's no way it's ever reviewed downwards. It's always reviewed upwards.
No, but
however, the concern has always been about salary. Yeah. Labor must also address issues of productivity. Yes, right. And then
that's an issue actually we are focusing on with our guests in our discussion segment.
Incessant strike.
That's right. Yes. Bayo Atoyebi, we'd like to thank you for being with us today. To see you tomorrow.
Thank you for having me.
Enjoy your Labor Day. Okay, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get into the first of our 2 topics for discussion this morning.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
in that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on Africa's largest television network, the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, to kickstart our discussion on the state of workers and indeed on Labor Day, let's take this background up by our correspondent, Oyemi Ajayi.
1st of May of every year is known as the International Workers' Day, which is also referred to as May Day. It is a day to celebrate the labor workforce in the world, and it also serves as a way to appreciate them for their unrelenting efforts towards the progress of their countries. In Nigeria, the day is always declared a public holiday by the government, and it presents opportunity for workers to bring to the table their desires and expectations from the government. The Minister of Interior, Abdulrahman Dambazao, in a statement to celebrate the May Day, appreciated the central role workers play in government activities and decisions, and for keeping faith with President Muhammadu Buhari's administration in its resolve to build a better Nigeria. The government solicited the continuous support of workers to government's effort to reposition the economy and uphold the shared legacy of all Nigerians. Usually, workers engage in march past among other activities for the celebration. This year is not an exception, as workers will converge on the Eagle Square in Abuja as well as other capitals for the traditional parade. On the front burner of the workers is the new minimum wage increment and a better and improved living standards and conditions of service for workers. Though the federal government has assured the Nigerian workers that the new minimum wage will be announced before the end of the third quarter of 2018, the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, has said that workers in the country will not have the patience to wait till the third quarter of the year for the implementation of a new minimum wage. These are parts of the issues that will be discussed on this episode of Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, sir, thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background report. And that, of course, has set the tone for our discussion this morning, our first discussion. It's on May Day. Of course, it's May Day, a day to celebrate the Nigerian worker. And it's our pleasure to welcome to our studios the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, Comrade Ayuba Waba. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning and happy Workers' Day.
Happy Workers' Day too.
Thank
and
you.
Also we have with us here in the studio Secretary General TUC, that's a trade union, Musa Lawal Ozigi. Welcome to the program.
Happy Workers' Day.
Same here. And from our Benin Network Center, we're being joined by Professor of Law, the immediate past Dean of the Faculty of Law and a member governing board, University of Benin, Professor Richard Itubo. Welcome to the program.
Right, gentlemen, thank you for being with us on the program today. Of course, we'll expect a senior government official to also join us in this conversation as we progress. First, Comrade Ayuba Waba, we had you here last year, and every Workers' Day, we always have labor representatives come to talk about the state of the Nigerian worker. From 2017 to 2018, what is the state of the Nigerian worker today?
Well, thank you very much. Let me start by saying that Workers' Day, or 1st May, is a day set aside globally. First, to recognize the contribution of labor to national development, because labor creates wealth. And secondly, for workers to celebrate themselves. In fact, it's also a day we canvass for policy issues, but importantly, we also advance or canvass issues of workers' welfare, better conditions of service, better living conditions for Nigerians. This had been the essence of the May Day. And therefore, as you also have said, this year is not going to be a difference. Because until we celebrate ourselves, nobody will celebrate us as workers. The condition of Nigerian workers have not substantially changed. Because as we are aware, the economic situation has not actually been on the side of the workers. They have been on the receiving end. There have been a lot of changes which actually have put the worker in a very difficult position. Importantly is the issue of inflation, which, as we are aware, have been ravaging. And secondly is the issue of the high cost of goods and services. And that has affected the quality of life of workers, because most workers cannot actually pay their bills. But importantly is also the issue of few states that, for obvious reasons, don't see the payment of workers as a priority. And therefore, the other aspect is pensioners, because side by side with the issue of workers is pensioners, because every worker is a potential pensioner. It's also the condition of our pensioners. In some states where you have a liability of more than 5 to 10 months of pension liability, this has been the situation. And therefore, where you have this type of situation, it's clear that workers will not have a decent living. People work to earn a living. Nobody works just for the sake of it. And therefore, clearly speaking, these have been the issues, and these have been the turn of events for Nigerian workers. Despite all of this, Nigerian workers have remained very resolute. They have remained very committed. In some cases, even the elementary working tools that are required for a worker to actually carry out his duties is not also there. And these have put workers in fact, in some cases, workers have to use their ingenuity to continue to provide services that are so essential to the general public. So these have been the issues. One, their condition of service. Secondly is working environment and better working condition. And thirdly is the issue of the economy, which workers are part of the larger society, and whatever affects the larger society, they will be at the receiving end because they have a fixed wage. And this wage, as we are aware, have not changed since 2011. So this has been the situation, and you can see that a lot of workers and the unions have been agitating for this situation to change, and for us to try to look at the condition of workers, because they don't have any means of livelihood, and they commit their time and energy to the service of the nation. And I said they create wealth. So this has been the situation, and it has not substantially changed. And we have tried to engage in some of those issues, particularly in states where salaries are not being paid as and when due. We are happy that we have been able to reduce the quantum. The two bad case scenarios we have is the issue of Kogi and Benue. But in most other states, there have been a lot of improvement. You are aware, you saw we intervened in the case of Benue, where they were able to pay some months. But this situation is not yet perfect. But the case of Kogi is the one that certainly is not a good situation. You are aware that many workers committed suicide because of the fact that they cannot feed their families, and they cannot earn a living. Particularly also the issue of pensioners. So this has been the trend, and therefore in this type of situation, we cannot say that it's perfect, but progress has been made in the states. Some of the states I mentioned, we have states that hitherto have 7 months arrears, but they have been able to clear. Part of it is Plateau. Plateau has 7 months arrears, but as I speak today, they have been able to clear it, and the payment is made as and when due. So it's about priorities. Once we get our priorities right, there will be always a way to address some of those issues. So this has been the general picture of the condition of Nigerian workers. Right. And I said importantly is also their working tools.
Yeah, you said that earlier.
Yeah. So
we'll come back to you. Let's bring in your other colleague from the Trade Union Congress. He's Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress. That's Comrade Musa Lawal Ozigi. Comrade Ozigi, what's your take on this? I mean, the president of the NLC has ticked off some of the challenges that workers face, particularly with regard to the economy. But we can also see that some of the critical indices in the economy have been looking upwards, at least in the past 6 months or so, when we got out of recession.
Thank you very much. You see, one of the problems the worker faces today is a social burden. First, The worker is expected that after his salary, he's the only one who will take care of his family, take care of his school fees, and all social issues that are supposed to be carried out by government. And what still, there's a worker that, you know, has a shame on his body that he goes to work, he can't take care of his family. Then his uncle's children are all there. So at the end of the day, with his mere salary, he has to take care of himself, take care of his children and the family, and the larger family. How can anyone expect a person to work on 18,000 and do all this? In other words, you are actually trying to create a situation where a worker may be susceptible to doing other things that he should not ordinarily do. So what are we saying? That as long as you are like a local government chairman of your own, you have to pay for your bills, you pay for your school, you pay for your health, then you go on transportation, all on 80,000. Obviously, we are not doing what we are supposed to do. That's the burden that is extra that the worker faces on a daily basis.
All right, I was just wondering, Rhoda, maybe we'll go to Professor Richard Edubo at our Benin Network studio. Professor Richard Edubo, you listen to the two top unionists that we have with us here in the studios, and oftentimes in their comments, they have used the bottom line, which is the 18,000 minimum wage. All workers are not necessarily at that rock bottom in terms of minimum wage. But what, from your perspective, is the state of the Nigerian worker today, bearing in mind all relevant indices?
Thank you. Clearly, the Nigerian worker is ailing critically because his take-home pay can no longer take him home. That problem has been endemic, and the endemicity shows no signs of foreseeable abatement. Recall that in this country we once had what we call cost of living allowance. Recall too that the national minimum wage for the very first time came in during Hassan Sumonu era. Immediately after 1981 May Day, on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, Nigeria was shut down by reason of the pressure mounted on government by the workers who were already at the end of their resources on this score, not living well. The national minimum wage at that time was so appalling, horrible. It is indeed the minimum pay. So it was the NSA-inspired strike of 1981, specifically on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, that shut down Nigeria. And the National Assembly, that usually takes its time to do it and takes a very long time to come out with the final bill for approval and assent, if you like, by the president, hurriedly came out. They took the bull by the horn, and within a span of 5 days, a bill was ready for the president to assent to. And on the 11th May, a new national minimum wage of 125 naira was enacted. And we thought that was good enough at that time, but it has since spent its potency. Then the totalitarian regime of Babangida also did something to increase unilaterally 100% increase in salary as the national minimum wage in 1991, a position which was thought to be inadequate because it didn't take into consideration the spread of salary across board. We had argued at that time that, look, nobody is against the payment of, increase in salary for the ordinary workers in the street, since a worker is entitled to his pay. But that you lump everything together and create a divide, create a problem unprecedented in the annals of industrial relations in this country was embarrassing enough. It didn't take into consideration the relativity ratio at the time. And the relativity ratio is at the time 1 to 9.2, which is healthy enough because there must be compensation for, as you grow in the service, there must be compensation for the work done. And this is something that stimulates the appetite of you and I to work harder. So you have opportunities that when tomorrow becomes tomorrow and you move to this grade level, you will appreciate the work better and contribute immensely to the development and growth of the economy. But when, as Babangida did, 100% was given to workers on grade level 1 to 6, without adverting to the foreseeable difficulty that will impose on salary thereafter, we reminded them that that was inadequate. And that if they want to do anything for the junior workers, they can build houses, they can give cost of living allowance, etc., for the junior workers who are in highbrow areas, etc., but not to create a disincentive to proper work effort. I think that was the position considered by Babangida at that time that made him to bring about, unilaterally though, 45% increase in salary from level 7 and above. That meant a little, and that was preserved in existence for a very long time until Obasanjo came in to address issue the way he did. Recall that Obasanjo had unilaterally increased the salary, but he quickly remembered that he was in a democratic setting and not that which he used to do from a totalitarian posture. National Assembly had to do something to bring about the minimum wage that we now had. I think that, and before long, it translated into 18,000 naira. You know, like I know so well, that 18,000 naira is not even good enough to feed a dog in Nigeria. It's not at all. We must call a spade, because whoever is looking for happiness exclusively for himself may never, ever get it. Labor, as Ayuba Waba said, creates wealth. If you put all the ocean of money in one hall, in this hall that I'm sitting now, monitor it for 1 year, it will not add value to itself. It is only when the money is galvanized into fruition and is set in motion that it can produce further wealth for the country. And the people doing this one ought not to be strangled, ought not to be strangulated by whatever means, because a regime or government, and I'm not indicting the present administration, it has been like that flowing from many, many administrations to this very point. The welfare of the workforce is hardly considered. The National Assembly ought to be forthcoming. We have military labor laws that are breathing heavily on the neck of the Nigerian workers. I'm surprised that Ayuba Waba and his team, TUC and his team, federal government, and then the National Assembly are doing nothing about repealing all those obnoxious military labor laws that are archaic and ought to be consigned to the dustbin of history. But we are acquainting ourselves creditably with all those laws that were foisted on us by the totalitarian regime, the benevolent dictatorship of Gawan, if you like. Many laws came in at that time. Obasanjo also tried to mellow down some of these things, yet producing the same effect. And we have had all of these statutes that usually are anti-workers preserved in existence, and nobody is doing anything about it. Every year we come in here to celebrate, and we are not thinking of all those harmful provisions of the statutes that are there yawning on us, and then leaving the workers no breathing space at all in any way whatsoever. I think we must do something. The National Assembly, the civil society organization, the NUC and TUC acting in combination ought to remind government of the need for a proper statute, comprehensive enough to ward off all of these military labor law provisions that are anti-workers. I think I will stop here for now.
Thank you very much, Professor Idubo. We'll get back to you in the course of our discussion. You've raised a very, very important issue. But then let's get back to Comrade Ayuba Waba. Yes, the key issue, of course, you've highlighted some of the issues of pensioners, states who are not paying, but I think the focus for now is on the new minimum wage, and that is you're advocating for 66,500. But the question in the minds of a lot of people is, how realistic is this?
Well, thank you very much. Let me try to put some issues into context. From 1981, when we had the first minimum wage to date, we have had about 7 reviews. And the ones that were done during the democratic regimes conform to the ILO standard that is a tripartite negotiation. There are two conventions actually guiding the minimum setting in every country, Convention 131 and Convention 26. We have a mechanism for setting the minimum wage, which is evidence-based. And that is why NLC and TUC took time to look at all the indices that is going to justify our demand. That is evidence-based, empirical data. And that is how we arrive at this issue of 66,500. Because you remembered when we submitted 56,000, it was almost 2 years before the discussion commenced. Yeah. And at the discussion level, all parties, both the employers, government and labor, can submit new memorandum with evidence to justify their demand. That was what we did in 2000. It wasn't an allocation. 2000 wasn't an allocation. It was negotiated under Comrade Adams Oshimole. Same with 2011, 18,000, which the process commenced, if you remember, around 2009, 2010. And we're able to sign it into law precisely in 2011. Why it is evidence-based? Because a national minimum is not only for government workers. It's for all employers of labor, including medium and small-scale enterprises, including other employers in the organized private sector. And therefore, the team need to discuss this issue in line with this principle. So where we are now, after the constitution of the minimum, because also you must put it into context, before the minimum wage tripartite committee was inaugurated by Mr. President, there was a formal demand by organized labor to say that the cycle of 5 years, not 10 years, what was agreed after the 2011 minimum wage negotiation, the tripartite team agreed, is nowhere in any law, because somebody was quoting, it's in a law. No. It was after the tripartite negotiation in 2011, headed by Justice Belgori, that all the tripartite group agreed that after a cycle of 5 years, we should be able to come back and do a review. So this is why after that cycle of 5 years, Labour now made a formal demand and reminded all the parties to say, we have agreed, ab initio, to say after a cycle of 5 years, we are going to come to do a review. And that is how we mounted that pressure until the minimum wage tripartite negotiating committee, in line with global best practice and ILO convention, was set up by Mr. President towards the end of last year. And since then, the process had been going on very smoothly, as we are aware. Recently, we had public hearing in the 6 geopolitical zones, including Abuja and Lagos. And we are going to actually continue to collect all those things and then meet up with the timeline the committee set. It's not set by anybody. The committee look at the quantum of the work and set a timeline to deliver on all of this. One, because it is a tripartite process, the process is that once the committee arrive at a figure, it will be transmitted to Mr. President before it goes to the National Assembly. We have gotten the commitment of the National Assembly. In 1 day, they have agreed to pass this into law. But the process is our governors. They need to agree on this process. And I think that is why we insisted that they should be part of the process. So that at the end of the day, it will not be the same old story. Oh, I can't pay. Oh, my state has no revenue. We want everybody to be on the same page.
What timelines are we looking at now?
Yes.
Because we're reading the paper.
Our timeline is August. Anybody quoting September should be out of it. It's August that the tripartite committee agreed with working timeline to deliver everything, including the passage by the National Assembly.
August 2020 or which year?
No. August 2018 place.
All right.
So that all the process, including enactment of the law, should actually be delivered. So this is actually the work plan. And I think for now, certainly I can say that the process is going on unhindered. There have been some renewed confidence in the process. And clearly speaking, I will urge Nigerians, including pensioners, because the new dimension is also that pensions, because of the fact that in some states, people pay ridiculous pension, some 2,000 naira, some 4,000. There is also this issue of, can we also side by side with the issue of minimum wage, try to put minimum pension so that we can also protect our very senior citizens. So this is the process. And I think we must understand this from the details have been able, because there are too many versions. And I needed to make this point so that we know the version that is correct and the version that is also authentic. So clearly speaking, this is where we are. And I think also from the point of saying that allocations of minimum wage can be made, if you do that, then the process of implementation also becomes difficult. And that's why the ILO said tripartite negotiation, where it will be agreed. Under military, you can do that under fiat. But under a democratic process, you must conform to this process and also the procedure and also the law. And I think that is what we have been doing from the period of 2000 and also what we did in 2011. When we reach difficulty, that is when the negotiations are not actually conforming to what we have agreed, is then you resort to self-help. But in this process, that certainly there is a renewed confidence, and we can see that all the employers have made their submission. NECA came and made submission. Yes, they agree on increase in minimum wage. Same with also the presentation organized labor made, and same with government. It's only few state governments that also raise issue about this issue of ability. But we know that
I'm wondering,
the issue of...
Comrade Ayuba, the figure that gets published from time to time is 66,500 naira. Is this the median figure from the various submissions made by the stakeholders?
No. This is the demand of organized labor. Other stakeholders will be free to also make their own proposal. Organized labor, NLC and TUC sat down looking at empirical data, cost of living index, and all factors that needed to be accommodated, including the ability to pay. All of these factors were considered, and we thought we are very reasonable in arriving at 66,500. Don't also forget, it's minimum. We are not talking of maximum, because minimum entails that below which is a national benchmark, below which no employer of labor employing a certain number of workers that is allowed by law should pay below. So this is the context, and I think this is the facts.
All right, thank you very much, Comrade Ayuba Waba. Now let's go to our Benin Network Center. Let's get back to Professor Etubo. Prof, you've listened to Comrade Ayuba. Of course, the main issue is the issue of the minimum wage and the amount. That's what labor is clamoring for. That's 66,800. I'd ask you also too, what is your take on this? Do you see this being realistic, that figure of 66,500?
Thank you. I'm not in a hurry to address the issue of 66,500 naira, which to me is reasonable. But we will miss the point if we say that the main problems revolve around minimum wage. We have a whole lot of problems facing the workforce. The conditions of service. I don't want to tell a tale out of court. The National Minimum Wage Act says any establishment employing 50 and above will be bound by the national minimum wage. I am saying that operational experience reveals that a number of persons are just hiding under these very dangerous provisions of the statute to do mischief to the workforce. How do they do it? Go to informal private sector. You may say organized private sector is not guilty of this, quote, unforgivable sin as such. But informal private sector, and you know, like I know so well, that we can only rely on the informal private sector, one-man establishment, etc., to run this economy very well. And if the workers in that regard are alienated from ever benefiting from the national minimum wage, because of the provisions that I refer to, 50 and above, look, we endanger the interests of the workforce. How? Go from what I know as one that was ever an authorized labor officer visiting and inspecting establishments. Employers of labor, some, if you like, you can increase it to most, in the informal private sector, they design a method by which they have two wages sheets. The one with which they trade with federal officials, and the one that is real, that impoverishes the workforce. And when you get there, they have 49 as the workers that they can show to officials, that they are not employing up to 50. And under such a situation, you cannot invoke the provisions that say the national minimum wage will be binding on such an employer, because it's not employing 50 and above. I am saying that we should look into all those provisions that may easily escape notice. If the interest of the workforce is to be protected further, a dangerous ailment deserves desperate therapy. Why cannot something be done to amend such provisions of the statute? Let it go down so that employers of labor will not have a leeway and impoverish workers in the line that I have just developed now. An employer that employs 200, on the payroll, what he has is 49 and tells you that all others are casual. They are just independent contractors and they are not employees as such. Look at the harmful effect of independent contractors, which elsewhere have graduated. I'm talking about South Africa here. I'm talking about Canada. I'm talking about even these other smaller countries in the Caribbean island. They have regarded independent contractors where there is mutuality of obligation. The independent contractor has no other employer that he looks up to. He regularly renders services to a particular employer. His status as independent contractor changes to that of dependent contractor that is entitled to the benefits which, when I say statutory employment rights or non-statutory employment rights deriving from negotiations, which our unions are usually involved in. If you do anything to alienate these kind of persons, then we are not protecting the interests of the workforce the way they ought to be protected. Effort.
Oh, all right. That's Professor Richard Edubob at our Benin Network Center. We'll come back to you, of course. He's a professor of law with specialization in industrial law. That's Professor Richard Edubob. We'll come back to you, as I indicated. We are being joined now in the Abuja studios by another guest. I did indicate that a senior government official will be with us right now. We have the Honorable Minister of Labor and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, who is joining us. Dr. Ngige, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria again.
Thank you. Good morning. Yes.
All right. So let's welcome you with a question. What is the state of labor today in the country? Are you happy? Are they happy with you?
Labor. The state of labor. It's a very wide question.
Yes. Take it anyhow you wish. Yes.
When we talk about labor, we're talking about employers, we're talking about employee, the proprietor of business, the primary person who is employing, and those employed. But both go hand in hand. Without an employer, you can't have an employee. Without an employee, with all your money, everything you have, every big bank account, you can't establish a business that will thrive. So, to me, labor in Nigeria today, I think I'm reasonably satisfied. At least what I met on ground, I think we've tried our best in this administration to inch up to the next step, next higher level. We have very good and cordial relationship with the unions we have in Nigeria. We also have reasonable good relationship again with the employers associations. They listen, at least. When they want to maltreat and we intervene, they listen. When they want to do unjust labor practices, we intervene, they also listen. The banks listened when they wanted to lay off people anyhow, and we said no. Same goes for people in the oil and gas. When Nigeria went into a recession, oil prices were so bad, no investments in the fields, and they wanted to retrench a lot of their workers. We intervened. They also listened. We said, cut the pegs at the big points and leave these people in the middle and the people who are at the lower rungs. And they listened to us. So we are, as a government, happy with what we're doing. And we will do more. We will do more. You see, the Nigerian Constitution in sections 16 makes provision for employment, workers' welfare, welfare of all Nigerians, as a matter of fact, so that their economy can benefit everybody. So to that extent, I think I'm okay with labor. But you must have some little ridges of misconception, misunderstanding, and you dialogue. That's what the ILO enunciated, and in this dialogue we do what we call tripartism. The government, the employers association, and the labor union, so on. So it's a tripod. We do tripartism, we do social dialogue, and arrive at decisions.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We'll come to you very shortly, but first, let's take the comments we're getting from our viewers via our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. They already sending in their tweets. The first one is from Michael Omakoji. Said, congratulations to all the workers worldwide as they celebrate today, especially those in Africa and Nigeria in particular. However, I hope government will use this day to better the conditions of our workers in terms of remuneration and better condition of service. Comrade Waba, just like you pointed out that the situation in Kogi and Benue are the most unfriendly condition for workers in Nigeria, what is your union doing in solidarity to workers in those states, and what actions have your unions taken against those states? Yeah,
I think Comrade Ayuba Awaba has already addressed some of those things he mentioned when he was explaining. Daily Jack Solomon has this tweet. It says, today as we celebrate the resilient, dedicated and loyal workers of Nigerians, we commend their commitment and efforts in spite of many challenges that they face, ranging from salary issues to poor working conditions that they have. Furthermore, using the same opportunity, I'm saying Happy Workers' Day to our civil servants, the public servants and workers in the private sector, NTA, GMN, crew and moderators. May the good Lord bless you all. Your labor shall not be in vain.
And this one is from Honorable Alawaye Musbarak. He says, as today is Workers' Day, I urge workers to carry out his or her duties properly. Also, government should pay their salaries on time and provide comfortable place for them to work.
All right, Daniel Anthony tweets, says, I believe in fair wage for job done, but not unnecessary agitation for increment. Labor isn't dealing with the plight of workers who have not been confirmed for many years. And
Festus Akimboyewa tweet says, Happy Workers' Day to all Nigerian workers who now struggle every day to make ends meet due to irregular payments of wages. The scripture says workers deserve his wages. Sadly, the opposite is what we have here.
All right, let's return to the Honourable Minister of Labour and Unemployment. Just before we welcomed you to the set, the President of the Nigerian Labour Congress was talking about the minimum wage and all the issues surrounding it. Now, he says, for instance, it's right here, if there's any contradiction, he can rebut it. He says that the tripartite negotiations, together with the enabling enactment that should follow, all of it should be wrapped up by August this year. Is that feasible? That's one leg. Second leg of the question, it says that a figure of 66,500 is a figure put forward by organized labor, but that there are other figures by other stakeholders which are yet to be considered, and therefore you arrive at a mean. What is your response?
Yeah, Comrade Waba, the president of NLC, is a member of the Tripartite National Minimum Wage Committee. And as a matter of fact, he's leading the organized unions, as the NLC is the foremost union for Nigerian workers. So the schedule he gave you is what we have. Okay. We have a program which is supposed to terminate by end of August. And we have religiously adhered to that timetable. We just finished our zonal public hearings. I chair the one in Port Harcourt South, and the others have also done. So we're on course on that one. Second leg of your question is, yes, the stakeholders are submitting their memoranda, and we are distilling the memoranda. We'll bring them up to the table for discussion. The issue of national minimum wage has a lot of misconception, and at every fora I get opportunity, all fora I get opportunity, I try to explain. The minimum wage is a baseline, is a baseline. below which no employer is supposed to go below impairment. You can't go below that impairment. You can go higher. You can go higher. In Edo State, before Comrade Oshomole left Edo State, he made his minimum wage 25,000 for the least paid worker there.
As a public worker.
Public workers, correct. And that does not mean that a private worker in Edo State is bound by that. No. Ability to pay is a cardinal index in the issue of wages, in fixing wages. So I do not see why Lagos, Rivers, Akwa Ibom,
Delta,
Bayelsa, even Delta. I don't see why they should be talking about a minimum wage of 18,000 and 20,000 or 25,000. Some of them have capacity to pay 50,000 to the least paid public worker in their place. Even some factories and industries in Lagos, same. And I know some of them are conforming. I know some big industries that the least paid person there is 42,000. So this is the issue of the minimum wage. And I had a professor talking about the law. We're going to look at the law holistically. All the gamut of the law will be touched. We propose in some of the submissions we've seen to take what they said there. Some people have proposed that the minimum number of workers should be 10 before the law is invoked on you. Some even wrote 5. So we are going to look at it and amend the law. It's a law. The minimum wage law is a law. And it's on the exclusive legislative list. The issue of minimum wage, industrial relations, industrial arbitrations, labor, item 42 on the exclusive legislative list. So that is why. So we are going to National Assembly with a lot of amendment to the previous law. So I think we will do a work that will be reasonable. Some states cannot even pay the 18,500 now. They have made their submission. And we will take that into account. We'll take that into account. Even if it means, again, like some of them were proposing, telling the Revenue Mobilization Commission to look at the distribution of the revenue of the Federation through the revenue formula. We can propose that to government, and government will do the needful. But as of today, we are working. We're interested in getting the Nigerian workers to have the best. The comrade president here will attest, even though he will not say it publicly. This government of Muhammadu Buhari is a worker-friendly government. When we came in, what was on the table was for retrenchment in the public service. Mr. President said, no, I don't want any Nigerian worker to go home. How does he feed his family? How does he look after his dependents? Some people argued, let's retrench, we can increase wages and things like that, and people will be happy. He said no. So we retained everything we have, everybody we saw. Not only did we retain everybody we met, we increased the volume of people employed. Yes, we have increased it through the recruitment in the police, recruitment in the army, recruitment even in the federal civil service. We're recruiting. We're recruiting. Whereas you and I were in this country when some military governments came and said, embargo on employment. So even if people are retiring, if people are going, there's no replacement. But we're replacing. And we're paying salaries as and when due. We're not owing. We have gone into the backlog owed by both Obasanjo, Jonathan administration, billions. We're paying. We're getting the backlogs down. Yes, promotion areas, 28 days relocation allowance, leave allowance, we're paying. We're paying. Even those who cannot pay immediately on pensions and the rest, we've put them into bonds and sent to National Assembly so that Nigeria Airways workers will get their pensions severance benefits. So this government has done a lot to be labor friendly.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Comrade Waba Ayuba, you're itching to respond to some of the comments that the Honorable Minister has made. But just before that, I just want to use the opportunity to ask the Honorable Minister, what is the latest on the Johesu strike?
Johesu strike. We met again yesterday.
Okay.
Series of meetings. And we're making progress.
Okay.
Why I say we're making progress is that if you go to the media, you'll see some altercation between Johesu and the Federal Ministry of Health. Some of the things written there are not correct. So I used the opportunity yesterday as a conciliator to warn both parties that I don't like this kind of conciliation. I'm conciliating. You go to the public media and you write things that are not true. You expose government secret documents. The employer abuses his employee because the Federal Ministry of Health are their direct employers. So they shouldn't go that route. You can't see Dangote go into the street and be altercating with his workers. It's not done. So the wave is coming down now, and government had made them an offer. And they yesterday came with their counter offer. But in the midst of looking at their counter offer, we discovered some incongruities in what they did with the CONHES table, which is the main crux of the matter. CONHES table, that is the Consolidated Health System payment scale. So they have withdrawn yesterday. By today's evening or tomorrow morning latest, they will bring their own counter offer for government. Everything boils down to money. It's money, money, money. And government made it clear yesterday on what they are able to offer. They gave them, say, this is our cap. You can work on this scale, on the percentage increase you want on this scale, within this cap. Affordability. So for me, that's a big step forward. And I made it clear to all of them. People are dying in the hospitals. People cannot access the public hospitals. And some of them don't have money to go to private hospitals. So as long as the clock is ticking, more lives are lost. You are not like university teachers who, when they drop the chalk and finish their negotiation, they come, they teach in the morning, teach in the afternoon, teach in the night, and say they are covering up the syllabus. A life is lost, the life is irreplaceable. Nobody. Jesus Christ is not still here to raise people from the dead.
Yes.
So that's it.
All right, Dr. Chris Ngige, thank you very much for that response. Now you talked about university lecturers and university workers. It was only a couple of months ago that we also intervened in the strike by non-academic staff of tertiary institutions and other research institutes. Yeah. And here you are also now seeking to intervene in the strike by Johesu. So my question is going to Comrade Musa Lawal Zige. What's your response to the view expressed in some quarters that a strike option, which is supposed to be one of last resort, is almost invariably the first recourse by labor in this country?
That would not be very correct, because internally, whenever issues arise, there's always, a discussion. It is when those discussions fail that we come out to strike. It is only the aspect of the strike that the public gets to know. You won't know what underground discussions have taken place that didn't yield any result. So it will not be correct to say that strike is our first option. It's always our last. After all efforts, all entreaties have failed, then of course we have to come out to the open.
Well, I'm wondering, I mean, let's say, Rhoda, I know you have your own question to Paul, but any observer, I mean, let's say, we just talked about the non-academic staff union. They were on strike for several months. Before then, ASU was on strike for several months. You have had judicial workers who are on strike. All kinds of, entities, every now and then, if this one is ending, another one is picking up. Resident doctors, sometime last year, they were on strike. What's going on? Is it that, is it just that, again, to restate the view that perhaps workers themselves or the unionists are impatient, with going through the entire hog of negotiations?
The issue is this. You see, there are too many distortions in the system that creates a lot of problems. And when you are pinched, you have to react. For instance, this minimum wage we are talking about, we have always wondered why there's no relationship between minimum wage and political officer salaries. We operate within the same environment. And somebody is earning 80,000, another one is earning millions in the same society. Obviously, when you have such a society, you do not expect peace. And there will always be continuous conflicts over existence. So the issue is that luckily the Labour Minister is there. We have always reached the ministry about all issues. It is when we do not get the result that we are looking for that will go public. So that's the way I think it is.
All right, I'd like Comrade Waba Yuba to also speak to these and other issues, because we've seen instances where government has called for meetings or have called for discussions, and sometimes unions don't turn up and they'll continue to, be on strike.
Let me try to put it into context. In Labour Palace, strike is usually the last resort. And there are processes and procedures for any union or worker to proceed on strike or industrial action. Let me also make the point, in the context of all the three sectors you mentioned, it has direct bearing with a collective bargaining agreement that was signed, or a pronouncement of court of competence that was pronounced, and the process that led to all of this is the collective bargaining process. And when any of the parties midway also fail to implement some of this agreement, it leads to the issue of agitation, the issue of notices, and invariably, if it's not nipped in the bud in good time, before it snowballs into strike. So strike is not tea party. No worker want to go on strike for the sake of going on strike. No union want to proceed on strike for the sake of it, except if it becomes obvious that that is a matter of last resort. Let me give you the instance of all the ones you mentioned. The one of ASU, it has direct bearing with the 2009 agreement. And notices usually will be given. Discussion will be going on, except where there is a process, where there is a stalemate, and there is no progress. Before you even go on strike, you must issue notice. For the one of Johason, the issue had been on for more than 3 years. Discussion had been ongoing. In the same sector, one issue was addressed, and they are all left out. That was what actually aggravated the problem. So it has direct bearing with a collective bargaining agreement that was mutually agreed. So no worker everywhere in the world, it's not only in Nigeria. You saw recently in France, the train workers were on strike. It's a developed economy, even in Germany. So it's a global phenomenon. It's a matter of last resort for the worker or the union to go on strike. Nobody goes on strike just for the sake of it. So clearly, what will get us out of this quagmire? Because there are procedures. Let us stick to the process of collective bargaining, where agreements are signed. If there are difficulties, before the time of implementation comes, if there are difficulties, nothing stops for a review. Let parties agree, so that we can save all this precious time that is being lost. Yeah, this is the procedure.
Comrade Ayuba, that's actually the point I would like Professor Idubo to respond to from our Benin Network Center.
There's one issue he raised. I wanted to speak to it before.
What is the issue?
One is about the issue of the minimum wage law. What we are doing now is all-inclusive. One is to review the quantum of workers that the law is supposed to cover. We now have 15, as the Honorable Minister have said. There are some that say remove the bar. Some said 5, some said 10. Yes. So it's an inclusive process. Two, also about the timeline for review. It's not there in the law. As I said earlier, it was a time agreed by the tripartite in the 2011. But now we want to put it in the law. So it's an ongoing process, which the current minimum wage review panel is looking at these 3 variables to be accommodated in the 1981 minimum wage law when it's being reviewed.
All right, thank you very much. Professor Richard Idubo, my question is going to you, following from what Comrade Ayuba Waba has said with regard to the causative factors for industrial action in a wide variety of sectors in the economy. He talked about the fact that collective bargaining agreements are often honored in the breach, rather than, going for full force, to implement them. From your experience, what has been the major challenge with the implementation of agreements, MOUs, or by whatever name called?
Thank you. I think there is a confusion of thought here. Now, at common law, collective bargaining agreements are not legally enforceable. And that seems to have weighed in seriously on the enforcers of collective bargaining agreement. But they forget to realize that there are indirect methods of effectuating the provisions of collective bargaining agreement. A former minister or secretary at the federal level in 1993 told the world of Nigeria that collective bargaining agreement is a contract of imperfect obligation. I don't think that has left the norms core of those who are at the corridors of power today, and they seem to have been dreaming of that one, that whenever they enter into collective bargaining agreement, it is not meant to be effectuated. This is not so. We have to realize that we must give business efficacy to all such agreements that are entered into. I invite Comrade Ayuba Waba and his colleague to note this. The relevant provisions of Section 3 of the Trade Disputes Act, the Section 7(8) of the Trade Disputes Act, they are strong enough to be a ground for you to give effect to collective bargaining agreement. And it obligates the Minister of Labor to ensure that whenever collective bargaining agreement is deposited with his office and he has endorsed it, the collective bargaining agreement becomes binding on the employers and the workers to whom the agreement relates. And that is conclusive. It is therefore not in the realm of contract of imperfect obligation. But what happens? The people who are guilty, I'm using it loosely now, of this problem that they create for workers are government functionaries. Government fails to realize that it has its role as an employer, but it relies on its position as a sovereign to bulldoze its way. Consequently, what it ought to do easily for the workforce, it doesn't feel able to do it because it's relying on its status as a sovereign. We must draw a line between government as an employer and government as a sovereign. This is where we have this problem. In the private sector, you hardly know of problems arising from this area. When they do arise, the strike may never be long. They are short-lived. An arrangement is made to ensure that whenever the workers go on strike and they come back, they spread their working hours to cover areas that they lost, so that they won't go home and say that they are not paid salary for the period they were on strike, and they regret that the workers were.
All right. Professor Richard Idubo, of course, you are in full flight. I'm sorry we have to interrupt you. We're pressed for time. We have two topics to discuss this morning. We'd like to thank you for your insights. I'm sure we hope there will be another opportunity when some of these matters arise. Professor Richard Idubo, Professor of Law, with one of the areas of specialization being industrial law, former Dean, Faculty of Law, University of Benin. You joined us from our Benin Network studios. We appreciate your contribution. All right, let's come back to our studios very quickly. Rhoda?
Well, I was going to ask the Honorable Minister to also speak to the issue that he said earlier, and that's what, we've been asking all the comrades here, and that's the issue of strike, and just as you said earlier, it's a deadly, weapon. But do you think that a strike is being often or too used by labor to always let the government know its opinion?
Well, I was a worker. I was in Federal Ministry of Health, so I was a civil servant. I moved through the rung of the ladder from level 9 up, medical officer, this, that, to level 16 before I left the service. So I won that shoe on that other side. I'm also a doctor, medical doctor. And medical doctors have gone on strike. They were back on strike. I never embarked on any strike. I have never in my life. Because I swore an oath, Hippocratic oath, the day I was being admitted into this noble profession. And the Hippocratic oath said, welfare of my patient utmost. My teacher, respect, is my brother and my father. So why should a doctor go on strike? If you don't like the profession, you go. You quit. You're taking an oath. Same goes for the health worker. Nightingale for nurses, epitome of nursing, and yet people go on strike in nursing. So, my take on strike, they know it. Even the unions, I tell them. The workforce is divided into essential services and non-essential services. The labor laws make it clear those who are on essential services and who should not go on strike. And who, if ever, they will go, these are the conditionalities, this stepwise formation of what you should do. They don't do it. They don't do it. The doctors don't do. The others don't do. Nobody does. As a matter of fact, I quarrel with the unions when they come and say, oh, we only resumed a suspended strike. I said, there's nothing like suspended strike. If you call off a strike, you've called it off. So they hide on that loop of suspended strike, and without warning, without giving the requisite warning, because there are numbers of days you are supposed to tell your employers, I intend to go on strike. 21 days. Some 42 days. Some don't do it. ASUU did not do. They told me that their own was suspended in 2013 or something like that, and that they resumed it. I mean, we don't operate that way. The laws are there. Laws makes for equanimity, equable society. But if you don't obey the laws and cut corners, so for me, there are ample opportunities for negotiations and social dialogue. He will have noticed it, he will tell you too. Since I became Minister of Labor, I put time frame on my negotiation for execution. I put timelines. And if those timelines are not going to work, I write the requisite user ministry or department or agency of government and say, this is your timeline on this. This is the CBA that have been deposited with me. So you're expected to do A, B, C, D between this. And I push the ministers. A lot of them don't like me again, but I push them. Yes. Because if you enter an agreement, it's an agreement. However, the professor of law, I don't agree with him completely on CBAs. CBAs can be renegotiated. ILO principles covers it. It can be renegotiated. If you feel something is there in the agreement, and at the time you did it, you were under pressure. Because that's what I told Johesu yesterday. I said, if you go on strike and you're negotiating, you have put the other partner under stress. He may buckle and accept certain things that's unable to do or effect. So this is my take on strike. And like Comrade President said, yes, some of the issues are from court rulings, court orders and stuff like that. If the other party does not obey the court order, it's your job to go back to the courts. Courts have a way to enforce their order, not by strike.
All right. The Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment and the other guests, who have been with us, this is the much that we can take. As we indicated, we have another topic to discuss, which is a very important one, actually, heights and skin, how it's neglected in the value chain process. But, of course, we also like to appreciate our viewers. We've had a torrent of tweets. We are unable to take all of them, but most of the tweets, of course, have been wishing workers, a lovely celebration and the very best in terms of enhancement of their welfare. So on that note, we'd like to thank Comrade Musa Lawal Ozigi. He's the Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress. Thanks a lot for being on Good Morning Nigeria today. We also would like to appreciate the President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Comrade Ayuba Waba. Comrade,
thank you very much
for being with us.
Happy Workers' Day once again.
And appreciation too to the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige. Thanks a lot for being here with us today.
Thanks.
And of course, we earlier signed off Professor Richard Edubo, who joined us from our Benin Network Center. All right, let's take a short break now, and then we'll get ready for our next topic.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, now we are taking on our second topic for discussion, which has to do with the summit that is coming up right here in the Federal Capital Territory. It's the first national summit on heights and skin value chain, and that the summit seeks to promote heights and skin as an important and lucrative subsector, which unfortunately had been neglected in the scheme of things with regard to the agricultural value chain. All right, Rhoda, of course, we're going to have a guest who's joining us. In fact, she's right here with us in the studios. Her name is Safia Mohammed Adamu. She's Chief Executive Officer of Inclusive Access Synergy. Hajia, it's a pleasure to have you join us on the program.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, tell us something. I mean, what's the big deal about the value chain with regard to heights and skin?
Oh, there's a very big deal to it. We have a subsector that's generally employing thousands of people. And over 90% of them are MSMEs. They're not just SMEs. They are actually really MSMEs. Really at that subsistent level.
That is micro
enterprises, and you find that these people put in so much, and there's hardly anything that's coming out of it. And worldwide, we all know that skins and hides coming from Nigeria have some of the best quality. Your Sokoto red skin, for example, is third in the world, and it's been exported since the Trans-Saharan trade. And the route is through Morocco. By the time Morocco adds value, it becomes Moroccan leather. Check that anywhere in the world. And you are like, and you go to some of these designer, some of these leather companies that manufacture leather, and they tell you that the leather they are using is coming from Nigeria. But our subsector is so disorganized. Nobody is really putting it together, organizing it in such a way that everyone will, it will be mutually beneficial, and it will be, it will actually increase the growth of the economy. So our view is this sector has been, well, what is happening to it? Let's examine the value chain right from the time of breeding. That's from the animal livestock to the time it becomes leather. And some may argue that we don't have enough skins for the tanneries. If you don't even organize it, you can't know what is the shortfall. So let's organize the entire value chain. Then we begin to look at the shortfalls. And another thing we must remember is that Nigeria, Kano in particular, was the center of hides and skin trade. So Niger, Mali, everybody brings their hides there. So if that market is reopened and governed with best practice laws around the globe, I think that the tanneries will be better off for it, and we have a lot of manufacturers of leather here.
What happened to the Kano hides and skin market?
Yeah. What happened, like the last time they actually had a law was 1968. After that, it just kind of disintegrated, like most of agriculture subsectors in the economy. It just kind of fell by the wayside. To date, they have the largest number of tanneries in the country. When we look at population of Lapan, hides and skin workers and all, the largest number concentrated in Kano. And we begin to ask, what is wrong? We've been on this for like over a year, like 18 months, trying to find out what exactly is wrong. Why can't they put themselves together? We found a number of factors, and one of those is the governing issues, and then of course technology. And most of the hides and skin processes in Kano, of course, are by families who have been in that profession for hundreds of years. So we need to get them a platform where they can meet with technology. Skills will meet with technology, and with that, you now just simply introduce, okay, in the world where we are today, certain things are considered, such as environment and climate. So you now try to marry that, and I believe with that, we are going to come up with a model that they can embrace, a model that they will govern themselves, much as the government is trying to come up with a policy. You also have a model that if it's working for them, they will be able to adapt that policy and make it better.
When you're talking about a platform, I guess you're referring to your summit that is coming up. And what does this summit provide? What are the prospects that this summit holds?
Since we're bringing together experts from the different fields. And when I say experts, I'm not just looking at the elitist experts with degrees. We're also looking at those with the skills who have practiced this over the years. And our belief is we tried in other cases. Our belief is if all of these people come together, the summit is more of a dialogue than just people coming to speak to people. The techniques are where you actually interact. And what everyone will be taking away is the satisfaction that you've been able to contribute your knowledge and what on your views about the subsector, what you think is going to come up with it. And our own responsibility is collect every one of this together, everybody's view together, synthesize it, and go back, not just put it as a recommendation, work out a model which will be agreed on by everyone on that platform that this is the way to go. There might be 2 or 3 suggestions, but we have to synthesize as, okay, let's work with this model and see how it happens.
Yeah, now the fundamental, if I get you right, the fundamental instigation for all of this is to ramp up the value chain in hides and skin. Now, walk us through the value chain in hides and skin. I mean, is it that you just slaughter a ram and then you skin it? Walk us through. What is the value chain like in hides and skin?
You see, it starts from the breeding level. Of course, we have animals that are indigenous to us. We have animals that have been imported. And then we have those that have come crossbreed. The value chain starts with the breeding. And before the abattoirs were actually set up, we have a situation where, like when I was growing up, I know there was something in Hausa somebody in Hausa would call Sarki Yanka, who sent somebody around the wards who collect skin when they slaughter. They had a process. The governance was you collect this skin, the person who slaughters for you, you don't really have to pay him because he takes the skin away and he deposits it with the Sarki Yanka. They value it. They had the process of flaring that was adhered to by everybody. So they had a collection center. Now you have the abattoirs. Now you have a new, not really new, some kind of process has been introduced to the flaring. And because we have newcomers with money and then there's more demand for it, those traditional processes have kind of died and they're no more lucrative because they are slower than what they are now. So if you look at the value, it starts with the livestock, then goes on to the butchering, and you go on to collection, the sales of the hides and skin and stuff, then it goes up to the tannery.
So how attractive is the hides and skin business to young people?
Well, if they look at it, it's like almost like every other business. The difference is that it's growing at an alarming rate, growing faster than a lot of people think. We want them to, especially those with livestock, to look beyond having livestock as I have 100 heads of cows, so I have a lot of money. No. Is the value add to whatever comes out of it we want them to see. But it's very important for them because the hides and skin worldwide is growing. And in the last seminars that came with leather shows in Dubai, for example, and one in Italy, they kept emphasizing that they have to start looking to Africa for more hides to feed
Sophia,
the
just the last question for you so that we can call it time on this discussion. What is happening now with our hides and skin? Is it that you're having people export them? If so, how do you hope to stem that tide of export without value addition? I think that's probably the essence, part of the essence of your summit.
Yes.
Are they just exporting? And if so, what is the route of export and how do you stop it?
Actually, government had placed a ban on the exportation of hides and skin. We're not saying it's not going on. They placed a ban on it. And what they export, they say the wet blue is processed to a certain level. Even the tanneries get that. But the thing is, because this has not been properly organized, you find that the tanneries, because the ban has affected them so much, most of them are no longer producing. Either they're not producing or they're producing at a very minimal level, and they're not making what they're making.
All right, tell us about your conference. When is it coming up, your summit? And
my summit is coming up from tomorrow, 2nd and 3rd of May.
Where?
At the exhibition pavilion opposite Radio House, just by ICC.
All right. It's on that note, I want to say thank you very much, Sefia Mohammed Adamu, Chief Executive Officer, Inclusive Access Synergy Limited. Thank you for coming on the program.
My pleasure, and happy Workers' Day.
Same here. Yeah. All right, now let's go to our sports desk for some sports news.
Reigning Nigeria 100 meters and 200 meters record holder Blessing Kadbari is seeking a first win at the 15,000 capacity Ahmed bin Shuaim Stadium on Thursday when the IAF Diamond League train is flagged off in Doha, Qatar. The Nigerian is making a 6th trip to the Diamond League season opening race and a 3rd time of competing in the 100 meters event at the Doha Diamond League. Meanwhile, the 5 African qualified team for the FIFA World Cup Russia 2018, Nigeria, Egypt, Morocco, Senegal and Tunisia will each receive an advance of $2 million of the prize money from FIFA towards the preparations for the Mundial. The decision comes of the heels of negotiation initiated by CAF President Ahmed, leading to the exceptional agreement granted on 12th April 2018. The 5 teams have thus been directed to contact the FIFA Finance Division in that regard. Also, Real Madrid and Bayern Munich will tonight at 7:45 meet at the Santiago Bernabeu in Spain for the 2nd leg of the UEFA Champions League semi-final, with the remaining champions sporting a 2-1 lead. Bayern took the lead in last week's semi-finals 4th leg through Joshua Kimmich, but goals for Marcelo and Marco Asensio gave Real the 2-1 win to take back to the Spanish capital. The German champions Bayern must score at least twice in the Bernabeu to stand any chance of reaching the final, and must do so against a seasoned Real side who have won the competition the last 2 years in a row. In tennis, Rafael Nadal remained atop of the ATP rankings released on Monday after breaking to his 11th Barcelona title over the weekend, and former world #1 Caroline Pliskova pulled out of the WTA Prague Open on Monday with injury.
All right, thank you very much there for the sports update. Let's go over now to the Meteorological Agency for the weather outlook for the rest of the day.
It's a pleasure having you join us on the weather segment from the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. I am Issa Helen Boye. The entire country is under the influence of moisture-laden winds, and this is expected to give rise to thunderstorm activities over Kano, Dutse, Gombe, Bauchi, Yola, high grounds of the central cities, although these rains will come early in the morning. Localized thunderstorms are also anticipated over Ilorin-Shaki, Iseyin axis, extending towards the eastern flank of the southern cities. Further into the day, pockets of thunderstorms are expected over the northwest. Slim chances of rainfall activities over the central cities, places like Abuja, Jos, Lafia, Kaduna, and pockets of thunderstorms to the southern states. Next is temperature forecast. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.
All right, happy Workers' Day to all Nigerian workers. Sure hope you have a wonderful and splendid celebration. I'm Rhoda Anonim, and that does it on Good Morning Nigeria today.
And I'm Kingsley Osadola. Of course, I join Rhoda in wishing all Nigerian workers the very best of the day and beyond. Enjoy your day. See you tomorrow, 7 o'clock in the morning for another edition of Good Morning Nigeria.